Hello, I'm Bert Oliver, and welcome to Bowie News and Views. John Rouse, co-anchor, co-producer. Please get us moving, Joe.
And General, nice guy, right?
Right, John? I agree. You're a nice guy when he's on the program, folks.
That's right. Off camera, it's a different story, as many will tell you. Well, thank you, Bert. Nice to be here again. You know, we discussed this before we went on the air, and I'm going to pose this question because I think it probably is unknown to most people in Bowie. Did you know there's a Bowie City election on the horizon?
You know, people have asked me that question, thinking I should know, and I said, well, certainly. They said, well, we haven't seen any publication about it, any discussion about it. So I felt like you're right.
Yeah.
Something we should bring up.
Well, last week I did notice that there was a little blurb in one of the papers about some volunteer fireman, his filed, Pete Mellitz, I think is his name, against Diane Palangan in District 2.
Oh, that's news.
It is news, yes, but you know, it was a very short piece. I have seen nothing else. I've seen no interviews with the candidates. We'll have to have these candidates on here so people can get to know them. I understand all 7 of the council people are running again, and they're filed, and they're ready to rip. But if you talk to anyone, and we've said this before, I've asked people, you know there's a city election coming up. The filing deadline is in, what, less than 8 weeks.
Yeah.
And, you know, nothing. There's no coverage. There's nothing.
That's amazing. It's late. To me, it's a late filing time, October 2nd, I think you said.
Yeah.
I thought it should have been earlier, so we'd at least hear when we could have questions about the city election.
Right.
We know who's running.
Exactly.
And it's a short term then to election day. So if you heard any other, now I do know Fred Robinson, everyone's filed on city council.
Yeah, everyone has filed. Geraldine, Councilwoman Geraldine, has told me that, you know, she started going door to door and people are taken aback.
Yeah.
And I don't know if any of the others have started meandering about town or not. As I understand it, even the Bowie Community TV Awards didn't attract one member of the
that's right,
of the city council, to which I think is rather surprising, unless, you know, they're locked into that old sense of complacency that, well, we're going to win. I don't know. In all candor, I think we have a fairly decent city council, and there are some on that council that I'm very pleased to see are running again, and I certainly would vote for them.
Sure.
But, you know.
But John, you know, you've been in the newspaper business almost all your adult life.
Yeah.
And that's saying something. And have you ever noticed this situation before?
No, I haven't. In elections past, there was coverage would have started long before this.
Sure.
Obviously, within 2 or 3 weeks of the election, there should be in-depth interviews and that sort of thing. But there should have been election stories.
Sure.
I can see that the papers do not have staff, so it must be difficult. It must be equally difficult that they're not even located here in the city of Bowie anymore. But there's an obligation. The people need to know who's running and what's going on.
Exactly, John. And where, other than what we will try to do, I'm not sure they will change and get on the roll maybe later.
I don't
Who
know.
knows?
But the coverage should have begun by now. It really should. And somebody sends in a press release. You know, I've seen a picture of Fred Robinson, the incumbent mayor, of course. He had a picture of his campaign manager, but that's all you saw. And then, as I say, this Mellitz guy, last week, a picture and a brief squib, which I'm sure he wrote. But, you know, these people, they should be interviewing these people.
Sure.
They should be stirring up interest. The community is absolutely unaware that there's an election on the horizon. You know that.
And that's exactly where it should come from. The newspaper, in my opinion, are community newspapers.
Yeah.
If they profess to be a community newspaper, they should practice their profession. And consequently, it was always something in the past that I personally look forward to. Everyone, it gave people, neighbors, community leaders and all, something to talk about. And you always, to me, get a little better results when you had a competitor.
Oh, I agree. I agree.
And even though many times there's been widespread margins, that competition should be encouraged, in my opinion.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
And I know incumbents would have said that before they became incumbents, and I'm sure they understand of what we're talking about. And of course, it seems to me, John, that I wonder if all of the outside influences in the sense of the economy, all of the rush things going on, and we're so near Washington, and I hear a lot of people talk about politics, but not local.
No.
And
well,
Al
Gallardo brought that subject up on our last show, that apathy prevails, the lack of participation in community organizations and what have you. But you know, traditionally in the city of Bowie, a voter turnout for a city election of 29 to 30% was considered a landslide.
Yeah, that was right.
It's always been in the 20s. Now, I shudder to think what the turnout for this is going to be. If this lack of publicity, this lack of attention, this utter apathy prevails, we'd be lucky to get 5% of the people registered to voting.
And, you know, you're absolutely right. And I do believe, I really wondered now about that question I asked about the influence of what's going on in the area nationally, that we seem to react to more. I had visitors from North Carolina, had visitors from Texas this summer, and when I talk about local politics, they say, we have good local politics. Robinson, Texas, outside of Waco. They're talking politics local more, and I'm talking national.
Oh, I know.
In our conversations,
I know.
You know. What do you think about what's going on in Congress? And I say, you know, Bert, I'm spending all my time in our local elections now because it's set right now for the national stuff, but we got local candidates that we want to see progress, and we want to retain some good ones, like in this Waco, Texas deal. And we talked about that. But I think that is not as typical here.
No, it's not. And traditionally, we've had fairly good local government.
Sure.
But local government, as we all know, is constrained by the influence of Prince George's County, which, quite frankly, I don't think has such great government. At one time it did, but it has sort of got worse and worse as the years have gone by. And these days, I'm not at all impressed by it. But unfortunately, the power lies there.
Yes, you're right there. And yet there is a voice, in my opinion, whether you have the authoritarian voice of a city council person, at least, and I know if you're ever out in a political setting, people ask you questions about you have no vote authority over. That's happening in the neighborhood or happening in the community. So they expect you to have some opinion about stuff that they have concern about. So although there's no authority, I do believe they got to be prepared, and we have some pretty good council people.
We have some excellent council members, yes, and city staff, fortunately, is excellent as well. Because we do have a city manager form of government.
Very fortunate there. John, you know, you mentioned it, but I'm going to touch on it's a ways off now. I don't want to get away from our Bowie situation with politics, but it's a ways off on the county council election. But I'm hearing all kinds of possibilities for county executive.
Oh, indeed.
The president executive, Johnson, is termed out.
Yes.
And a lot of county council people are termed out. So they have no choice unless the rules change.
Well, the one who represents us is not termed out yet. So perhaps there'll be some competition there, which would be
she's still in. Ingrid Turner is still in the first term, right?
I had a conversation recently with Aunt Agatha.
Oh. Well, good to hear from you.
Yes, it was, but she expresses absolutely no interest in getting back into her prognostication. But she has said that in that county executive situation, we have Glenn Ivey, the current state's attorney in PG County, the big prosecutor, and of course the sheriff, the one whose folks went around killing dogs. And, you know the one I mean.
It's not funny, but...
Well, they're in there. And Rashawn Baker, who is certainly a very highly qualified guy. We've had him on the show. He's run before. He came rather close to... closer than he had in the past in the last election, but unfortunately his campaign was not all that great. He really could have spruced that up. But I understand that Senator Mikulski, who, by the way, I think is out of commission